Welcome back to the Black Pill. Today, let's talk about the early days of the internet, the early 2000s, the late 90s. And there's this wonderful line in The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe about the deep magic. Witch, don't tell me about the deep magic. I was there when it was written. And so let's just talk really briefly about the heady, free for all Wild West days of the internet in 1999. So Facebook wasn't a thing yet. There was not an Instagram or a Twitter or a Facebook where facts go to die. There was barely maybe a MySpace. AOL was the order of the day, America Online. We entertained ourselves on popcap.com or in chat rooms or we read blogs. There were only a few blogs back then rather than the current number that seems to exceed the population of the earth. I was mildly interested in etymology, the study of word origins. Not enough to go to school for it or anything, but enough to read like the Mother Tongue, Bill Bryson's book, or Evan Morris's Word Origins blog. Um, he passed away finally, must have been 10 years ago. This was all fun. It was a distraction from the life that at the time was pretty hard for me. Bryson or Morris or maybe both. I don't remember. It's been a long time and my memory's not so good. But they, one or the other or both of them, wrote about the phenomenon of folk etymology, which seems to have started in classes for non English speakers, led by non native English speakers. And they'd explain words in ways that made sense in a context for them. Those explanations weren't based in any way in reality. So there's a story, and I don't remember the source, so always take salt with this stuff, of a Japanese English language instructor claiming that the word truss, Truss, which means a broad beam, comes from the word trust with a T. For example, because it's strong and you can count on it, and that kind of thing. But as the chat rooms started and social media crept into the landscape, there started to be this more malignant thread. Maybe mischievous is a better word, except eventually this all leads back to malignancy. Native speakers of English would devise these fanciful origins for words, which were made up. They were just to get more hits and more ad revenue. A classic is the idea of raining cats and dogs. Uh, the story, the purported origin being that it would come from an era of thatched roofing, and cats and dogs would try to stay dry by hiding in the thatching in houses, and a really heavy rain would wash them out into the street, and so it would rain cats and dogs, and that's just complete shit. That is not the origin of that phrase. Another is the idea that throwing out the baby with the bathwater somehow comes from like dirty 18th century American families sharing bathwater, and you heat up water and you carry it out to the tin bath, and then dad bathes first, but he's really dirty, and then mom bathes, and then each child bathes until the water's so murky when the baby gets into it that you can't find the baby in the bathwater and you throw it out. And that's just a lie from beginning to end, start to finish, top to bottom. This is lying for money. Amusing or exciting lies get more traffic than pedestrian truths. For words, the truth is sometimes a little uncertain and often completely ambiguous. Like words often get just lost in history. It's never ever, according to Evan Morris, it's never ever that the word starts as an acronym. For example, for unlawful carnal knowledge. That's just a lie. Um, but the internet is a free market sort of system, and the principles of evolution are at work. It selects for hits, which naturally selects against truth. So sites that tell truths tend to fail, and sites that inflame passions tend to succeed. So here we are in modernity with YouTube, and YouTube algorithms are designed to keep you on the site. They track what you watch for how long, and when you leave in the middle of a vid, they learn quickly to feed you more and more extreme content. Uh, do this experiment. Turn on autoplay. Start a blank YouTube. Sign out of it. Start a blank YouTube. Turn on autoplay. Leave it going for 6 or 8 hours and see what kind of shit is playing when you get back. Um, start with a random video and see where that leads in 6 or 8 hours. So the people who tweak the algos kind of know that if they tweak them too far to prevent the spread of misinformation, that people will tune out of the site and tune in to something more exciting. Um, yeah, yeah. See these gray hairs? Like when we were kids, when people my age were kids, we had to literally tune the television into a station and literally tune the radio with a dial. That's where those words come from. Um, Facebook and Twitter algorithms know that argument keeps you present. The more personal, the better. You will tune in to complete a savage argument way more than to check out how many likes you have on your selfie. Fake news generates traffic and lies generate traffic, and the more conflict, the better. These things are really conflict engines. The social media platforms are conflict engines. They monetize conflict. The more you're arguing, the more you're on the site, the more ad stuff you're seeing, and the more revenue is generated. And as all this stuff evolved, the internet troll came to natural prominence. Trolls and griefers used to live mostly in M-morgs, giant online roleplay games. The troll throws an incendiary line into the chat, and they get gratification from seeing the long anguished responses. They're wasting your time getting you to argue with a thing they probably don't even believe, like flat Earth or fake moon landing stuff. Um, in surveys of flat earthers, many more people say they espouse the view than believe the view. It's just a rhetorical game. And outrage is the end goal. Outrage is the product. They're just nose tweakers. Griefers are a related but different breed. Both tend to score high in narcissism and psychopathy on tests of those things. But these are people, the griefers just like to destroy stuff. One of the M-morgs early on, in my mind, it's Ultima Online, but I haven't checked lately in memory. One of these things was basically destroyed by the griefers. Do you remember? There are people who wait in hiding next to a quest objective, and then when a player comes by about to grab that thing or kill that boss and finish the goal and level up, the griefer pops up and kills them or takes the artifact or whatever. You know, you're fighting the boss and you're down to your last 15 hit points, and but the boss is down to his last one and you're about to beat him, and then the griefer who's been in the bushes watching all of this pops up and plinks you off and then takes your shit and runs away laughing. Fuck you, ha. In this particular M-morg that's in my head, older players, they leveled up for a while. Then they'd go to the spawn village where new players would enter the game at level 0 or 1 or something. And then anyone coming into that game after character creation was immediately hacked to pieces by these older characters who just sat there just to mess up the game, just to mess it up for everyone, just to crash it. Various fixes just didn't help the situation. The subscriptions dried up, and so there was a whole rethink that needed to happen on that thing. Ultima, when I wrote this script, Ultima was doing fine. So I don't know if that was the game or not, but I suspect, smarter people than me remember which one it was. And then as social media really gained in prominence, especially with affordable smartphones and rapid adoption, it became clear to anyone who was looking that the way to gain a lot of attention in the attention economy was to co-opt the algorithms. So the white power people co-opted YouTube pretty hard. You could watch a video about IQ, and then an hour later you're led into this whole racist blogosphere about which race has the highest IQ, and race realists who are in fact race unrealists, and even scientists, discredited scientists, but you don't know the difference, espousing fake science such that any layperson would believe there's a real thing about race and IQ. Twitter and Facebook had to make some changes they've never been keen to. Like, we're going through it all again with Zuckerberg, like today, and but that shit makes them money, sonny. Facebook, in particular, cashed in on profiles, personal data fed into algos to predict behavior. Advertisers in more mainstream kinds of media buy time and programming they think aligns with their customers' interests. But Facebook all but guarantees through the magic of algorithms that your cache will speed your message to vulnerable eyes and ears. And now we bring on the era of modern politics. Trump and his people noticed. They weren't first in line, of course. This all evolved gradually, if not slowly. Like 20 years is no kind of a long time. The global warming denial movement was on the scene ahead of Trump. He and his team co opted much of their infrastructure, and I suspect they hired many of their operatives too, just because the playbook is so similar. There's a reason that Trump and his people are on the wrong side of every social issue and every science issue. Everything that is measurable, everything for which a truth can be known, they deliberately take the wrong side of the argument. Black Lives Matter? No. Blue Lives Matter. Kneeling for an anthem? No. Black NFL players are just entitled thugs. Vaccines? No. Anti vax. Climate change? COVID? Hoaxes. These issues have things in common. Believers are passionate. The more that you argue with them and present facts, the more they believe the bullshit that they espouse. They're on the web a lot, not least because that's the only place to get those inclusion needs validated. They're often not welcome in polite spaces, and they generate conflict. Conflict generates traffic, and traffic generates cash flow. There's a phenomenon in which some people continue to believe things after those beliefs are proven false. They can see maybe that it's false with their frontal lobes, but that fact doesn't permeate to their attitudes or behavior. They create increasingly elaborate reasons to continue to believe the falsehood. Does that sound familiar? In groups or packs, this is really dangerous. Any excuse to believe a thing is welcomed and reinforced by the warm, inclusive in group all around. This is cult behavior in real life. And when those beliefs move off the web into real life, they act just like cults. So America has a disease right now. Fox News is absolutely complicit. Newsmax is an active creator of the illness. Facebook and Twitter are reluctant to or incapable of fixing it. It makes them money, lots of money. Facebook rakes in more than all the cable news outlets combined, and corporations have no moral sense. They can't. The disease is the attention economy. The symptoms include a fake news blogosphere in which we experience entirely different realities. If I believed what the Trump people believe, the ones who watch Newsmax all day and whose social media experiences don't include any credible information, I would also be breaking into the Congress to stop the certification of Biden's presidency. There are other symptoms, some weak epistemology, overconfidence, the erosion of expertise, the crumbling of democracy. Democracy requires two things to be present. One, that every vote counts equally. Two, that the voting public is well informed. Republicans have been at war with democracy as long as I've been alive. For sure, fucking with how votes are counted. 8 of the 10 most gerrymandered states in the union are red states. North Carolina is usually number one. And relying on sort of semi natural states of affairs like Montana and California having the same number of senators. They've always pushed racism since 68, sliding from direct use of the N word into more abstract issues like marginal tax rates. And they've always lied. The idea of trickle down economics never held water. With the current tools in hand, though, learning those lessons initially from folk etymology, Republicans have taken the power to lie to a whole new level. The power to create consensus reality for millions of Americans. A reality in which you win even when you lose, and violence is the only alternative.